In 49 states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana. Our two star players, Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam, put our team on their backs, and they just decided that we were not going to lose this game today.
And that MVP is Pascal Siakam.
First of all, shout out Indy, man. It's been such an amazing experience for me so far. From the first day I landed here, like the love has been amazing. Chad, KP, just unbelievable, man. Like, you know, first class organization.
And then tonight, sometimes the unexpected happens. And sometimes Thomas Bryant catches fire from deep.
Yeah, Thomas, yeah!
You're not going to have to worry about any questions about the team trying harder than you did tonight, because it was obvious, man. You guys did a great job. Congratulations. Look, you are the longest tenured member of this team. 10 seasons wearing this uniform. And now you're going to the NBA Finals, man. Tell me what that does for you.
Woo, man, it's been a long time coming, man. Come on. Man, first of all, man, I got to give a huge shout out to the Simons, man. They never stopped believing in me. This front office, this organization is amazing. I've spent a third of my life here, man. It's crazy. You know, I've really grown up here with y'all. And it's so validating just to get this in this fashion against one of our rivals 25 years later. And I'm just excited for what's next, man. We got 4 more.
But for the first time in 25 years, they are going to the NBA Finals.
Hello, Pacer fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show. You know, in 49 states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana. And today, Pacers Nation, we're not just talking hoops. We're talking history, because it's finally happened. The Indiana Pacers are going to the NBA Finals for the second time in franchise history. And for the first time in 25 years, your Pacers have punched their ticket to the biggest stage in basketball. Let that sink in. We're just 4 wins away from an NBA championship. This is for the legends of the ABA days. Mel Daniels, George McGinnis, Roger Brown, the ones who built the foundation, who made Indiana a basketball state long before NBA came calling. This finals run is part of that legacy. Slick Leonard and his wife Nancy, who without them, there would be no Indiana Pacers basketball. This one's for Reggie Miller, who carried Indiana on his back and gave us moments that defined an era. This is for Mark Jackson, the Davis boys, Rick Schmitz, the grit, the grind, the glory. This is for Jermaine O'Neal, Ron Artest, and Steven Jackson, who came so close but never got their shot to finish the job. This is for Danny Granger, Paul George, David West, Roy Hibbert, and those early 2010 squad who fought through the East but ran into a king. This is for every fan who packed the field house when the odds were stacked against them, who believed when the nation slept. And now, this is for Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, and the new era of Pacers who just shocked the league and made Indy believe again. This is for Rick Carlisle, who's come full circle to lead this team back to the promised land. The wait is over, the drought is done, and the NBA Finals are here. The Indiana Pacers will be taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder starting on June 5th for Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Welcome into the show. Thanks for following along. We are over on YouTube at the Pacers Fever Show. You can also find us on socials at the Pacers Fever Show. We are anywhere you can find your podcast, and we are excited today because this episode is probably the most meaningful time I've ever had talking about the Indiana Pacers and my fandom. I've been a fan, I guess, of the Pacers for 32 years. That's how old I am. I guess I wasn't really rooting on the Pacers in my early stages, but my family rooted on this Indiana team, and because of them, I am a Pacers fan. My grandfather, who passed away earlier this year, was a huge Pacer fan and was somebody I would have called after a game like this. He, in his fandom, he was very pessimistic at times. In fact, he was one of those people when he roots for a team, a lot of times what he wants to do is is to give up, sort of get a little pessimistic about the team's chances to win a game or pull out a series, just because when they do, he can feel good, and if they don't, then he can say, well, I told you so. But he was always a diehard fan. This was his team. He passed that on to my dad, and my dad's a huge Pacers fan. And, the whole series, the whole time I've ever been a Pacers fan, he's been there watching them with me. We've been to many games, and he even makes the trip up here whenever the Pacers are playing in Orlando to go see the Pacers at Amway. We saw them both times they were up here this year, and that was in that really tough stretch at the beginning of the year when they started 10-15, and it was rough. They lost both games at Amway, but back then I think you thought, well, this team that we thought had championship aspirations has fallen flat on its face. Are we ever going to be able to pick this up? Tyrese Halliburton was struggling. Pascal Siakam was trying his best to just carry this team. Aaron Nesmith goes down with an injury. Andrew Nembhard down with an injury. It just felt like this team was crumbling from all the pressure and all the expectations that were put on them. But as soon as the calendar year changes, this team becomes a bona fide take your lunch money kind of team. And honestly, I've never had more fun watching a sports team. My 2016 Cubs won the World Series. I would put Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals up there with the Game 7 World Series championship game that the Cubs won. Obviously, that one meaning a lot more to me, I think, right now. But as time goes on, those are two of the biggest sports moments that I'll remember for my lifetime. And this is a special feeling, I know, for a lot of people. Just looking at the reactions on social media, on Twitter, and looking at all the people that I follow, because we've got some of the best content creators for such a small market. We have really great podcasters, really good writers, great radio shows, one of the best TV crews, and Denary Buckner and JJ. I just feel like we are incredibly lucky to have people like this who understand the game. And I think that's what makes it so special for a lot of these fans, is because of the high basketball IQ that Indiana fans have. It just makes it even sweeter, just because we know what's going on in these games. We understand the level of difficulty. We appreciate our stars. We don't trash our stars. We give our guys a lot of opportunities to right a wrong. And I feel like we have one of the best, if not the best, fan bases in the league. And we're going to run up against, I would argue, the second best fan base in this league behind ours, in the Oklahoma City Thunder. And what an exciting time it is to be a Pacers fan, because let's look at it like this, right? And I've talked about this in my last episode, previewing Game 6 and Game 5, I believe, too, is when this conversation started. This doesn't feel like a one-off, right? We make an Eastern Conference final run last year. We beat some injured teams, granted. This year, I think we got the same kind of storyline with the way that Dame was hurt in that Bucks series, the way that the Cavs just dropped like flies in the semifinals. And then finally, we get to the Eastern Conference Finals to prove just what this team can do. I think that was really important, because this Pacers team got swept out of the Eastern Conference Finals last year against what would be the NBA champions in 2024, Boston Celtics. And I felt like probably the closest sweep I've ever seen in the history of the NBA. The Pacers were in every single one of those games until the end against Boston last year. And I felt they were ready to take that next step. But then how the season starts, you get really down on this Pacers team. You thought they had so much more to give, but it looked like they were going to have to make some changes at the trade deadline. And all of a sudden, we get healthy and we start to click, and you see the team that we saw last season, minus a couple of things. But as the postseason has gone on, and as the regular season came to an end, you saw the bench come alive, and has come alive in the last couple of weeks in a way that looks so much more like the team we had last year with another year of experience. And that's when I felt the Pacers had reached the level in which they needed to. And honestly, it really started in this Knicks series with Benedict Mathurin playing the way that he did, Toppin playing in the way that he did in Game 6, TJ McConnell and all those other games too really started to come alive. You got really good performances from Thomas Bryant in the games that he played. Tony Bradley came in. I mean, we're playing our 13th and 14th option off the bench in a Eastern Conference Finals game, and it just worked out. And I think it speaks so much to the direction in which this Pacers team is headed and how long this competitive window might be for the Indiana Pacers. And before we jump into recapping the game, and we won't do a huge recap on the game, we'll talk about individual players because I think it was way more important to highlight what these players did in Game 6 to close out the Knicks. But I want to talk again here about the competitive window and what this year has meant and what it means going forward. And I've talked about this in other episodes, but if you're listening for the first time, this will be the first time you're probably getting some of this stuff. But I do just want to reiterate it. The Pacers competitive window starts now, and I truly believe until we have a time in which Tyrese Halliburton is not around or as effective as he has been in this early stage of his career, he's not even reached his prime yet, not even close. You're talking about the Pacers being competitive for the next 8 to 10 years should he stay healthy. That's incredible. Just because this Pacers team has been longing for somebody like this, right? Think about the years that we've had Reggie and how competitive we were in that stretch. It's the same thing with Tyrese Halliburton. You feel that sense of this guy's going to be good for a very long time. And there's not really anything that the rest of the league can do to stop just how competitive this Pacers team is going to be for the next decade. Like I said, if Tyrese Halliburton stays healthy, this is a team that shouldn't miss the playoffs as long as he's on the roster. They will be favorites heading into the Eastern Conference next year to win the Eastern Conference again. They've done it in 2025. They're going to be favored in 2026. And it's probably not until Jason Tatum returns in 2027 that Boston at least challenges them for favorites to win the conference. Now, there's going to be obviously some media bias who are going to pick the Knicks because the Knicks might go make an addition, or the Celtics or the Cavs because they might make some additions. But it's not until the Pacers get dethroned that they're not going to be the favorites or should be the favorites. And I think the way that the tax apron is set up for the Celtics, where the Celtics are really going to have to consolidate to stay in a reasonable first apron and not pay that second tax, where the Knicks are going to have to do the same thing. And I'm not really sure that they can add much except to their bench because they've gotten rid of all their picks. There's not really any trade assets out there with them. The only person that would probably be a good trade piece, I don't think they'll part ways with in Karl Anthony Towns, but who knows? Crazier things have happened. And if there's a bigger player out there, like a Kevin Durant, that they might want to go to, I don't know if they're really going to make the necessary moves to really challenge Indiana again in a 7-game series, because the Pacers will get better, a year better, more experience. And I still think cause so many issues for the Knicks that I don't feel that the Knicks would be favored in a series against the Pacers until they make a really big change. The Detroit Pistons are coming, but I think they're 2 pieces at least away from being true contenders. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks, who could be moving on from Giannis, but even if they don't move on from Giannis, they're stuck. They don't have any of their picks, so they're in a rut. And then you look around the rest of the league, you've got the Celtics, who have Jason Tatum, who's out for next year. You've got an aging roster. They're going to flip it over some, I think, in this offseason. So it really is the Pacers conference to lose over the next few years. I don't really think, outside of maybe the Cavaliers, that there's a team that's really going to challenge the Pacers. I think the Cavs, if they do things right, could be a team that at least challenge the Pacers next season. But I just don't see where the Knicks or the Celtics are going to have enough to challenge these Pacers next season. Then you look ahead when Tatum does come back and the Knicks make their big move because they finally move off of a team or a core that doesn't necessarily work. And the Knicks are always going to be competitive as long as Jalen Brunson is there. The Celtics are always going to be competitive because Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are there. The Magic have an interesting team, but I don't think the way that they shoot the basketball that they're really going to challenge Indiana. Pistons, like I said, a couple moves away. Bucks trending in the wrong direction. The Sixers are a hot mess. So it really is the Pacers conference to lose the next 2 to 3 years. Because of the retooling that the Celtics are going to have to do, because the Knicks seem to be kind of just stuck where they are. I don't know how much they can get better. You look at the free agents that they might add, and it doesn't really jump off the page at you, the people they can add. But there's a lot of changes coming in the NBA, and things can change overnight just because we've seen what happened with Luka Doncic. Crazier things have happened where the Eastern Conference could have somebody land a big superstar, and that takes them to the next level. Giannis is going to change whatever team he goes to, right? Whether that's this offseason at the trade deadline or that following season. I just don't think that Giannis is long for Milwaukee. But again, I just wanted to preface this conversation that we'll have today and then heading into the NBA Finals, because the Pacers will be big underdogs in the NBA Finals until they prove that they can hang with Oklahoma City. And we've had a hard time with that in the regular season, but there's reasons why. I just think that the Pacers' opportunity and their window starts now and probably doesn't close until Tyrese Halliburton is no longer an Indiana Pacer. That's how special he is. That's how great this team is. That's how good Rick Carlisle is. Kevin Pritchard, KP, Chad Buchanan. You look at the Simons. I mean, this organization, Ted Wu, they know what they're doing. This coaching staff knows what they're doing. They've got the right guys. They've got great humans in that locker room. And I think that's what a lot of people should key in on. Why are Oklahoma City and Indiana so successful? And I get SGA's a MVP caliber player. But outside of that, there's rising stars on that team. There's really good role players on that team. But you look at the character of all these players on both of these teams, they are high character, high IQ, team-oriented players. And that's what makes these two teams special. And that's what makes the Pacers special. I think Miles Turner referenced SpongeBob, right? The power of friendship. It really is. These guys love each other. They will go to bat for one another. They will battle for one another. They want to see each other succeed. I know there's a lot of viral stuff going around about Tyrese Halliburton looking like he's approaching Ernie Johnson because he thought he was going to win the Eastern Conference MVP. But you can just tell even when he doesn't win that, which it was a 5-4 vote split. Pascal Siakam gets the Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy and award. It was a 5-4 split, 5 for Pascal, 4 for Tyrese. But you can tell after just how happy Tyrese is for Pascal, right? It goes to show you just how, and if you haven't watched this team closely and you're just kind of following along now, you're a new fan, or maybe you're a fan that stumbled across this, maybe you're an Oklahoma City fan that wants to listen to, as much content as possible to prepare what the Pacers are going to bring to this series, or you're an outsider just listening to this podcast because you want to hear a Pacers podcast or a Pacers point of view. This team, since last year, and even before last year, you could tell how much these guys wanted to win for each other. And you listen to the way Miles Turner talks about this team. You listen to the way George Hill's talked about this team. They've been special for a very long time. They've just been really young. And I think another thing that Tyrese talked about, that Pascal's talked about, every single one of these players at some point in their career, or as recent as like the last couple of years, were given up on or underestimated. undervalued. You look at Tyrese Halliburton, who was with the Kings, who was a later pick in the draft, who was undervalued, who was never a high recruit coming out of high school going to Iowa State. And even at Iowa State, he was seen as a good point guard, but not a great point guard, right? He was going to struggle with the physicality of this league. Look at Andrew Nembhard, was a second-round pick late in the second round. You look at Aaron Nesmith, who was drafted by the Celtics and given up on. You look at Tony Bradley, who was in and out of the league and didn't play for a couple of years. Thomas Bryant, a journeyman. He's on the Lakers, DC, Miami. The guy never found a home, right? And even as a Hoosier fan, watching him at IU wasn't great. He was good, wasn't great. And I think there were higher expectations of him coming out of high school to college, and that just never panned out for that team at IU. So I think he had something to prove to Indiana fans once they got him again. They love Thomas Bryant, but he was no Cody Zeller. So there was that aspect too. TJ McConnell was labeled one of the worst players in the NBA when he was with the Sixers. Sixers passed on him. They're like, you know what? We'll let him go. That's fine. Obi Toppin, the Knicks gave up on. They probably regret that one. They let him walk to Indiana. And then, you got guys like Mathurin and Jarris who have been seen as top 10 NBA players in their draft class. So you look at all these things, right? Miles Turner, don't want to miss that one. That's the elephant in the room, right? 10 years. You listen to it in the intro. 10 years. A third of his life. He's 29 years old. A third of his life has been spent in Indiana. And I will say, for 8 of those years, maybe all the way up 10 of these years, I think the last 2 years he's gotten a lot more appreciation. But for first 8 of those years, even the franchise, even the organization was a little shaky in their confidence with him. And I think what shows that is they went out and threw a bunch of money at DeAndre Ayton. I don't know if they would have kept Miles Turner and Ayton together. That is still something that we will never know, just because Ayton gets his contract matched and he doesn't sign with the Pacers. But Miles Turner, always in trade rumors, always, I don't know if this team can win with Miles as their 5. I just don't know if he's tough enough. Don't know if he's got the mentality to do it. Don't think he's got the leadership to do it. Too slow. He's a big in this game that, the bigs are kind of getting phased out. What can Miles really bring to this team? Does he really take him to that next level? There's games where he just fades. Miles Turner has proven everybody wrong. I think everybody at some point in their fandom of Miles Turner has doubted his ability. It's gotten frustrated. But at the end of the day, the thing that you can really ride home with is the fact that Miles Turner is an Indiana Pacer, and he should be an Indiana Pacer for life. And he should have his number put up in the rafters when it's all said and done. Like, that's how much Miles has meant on the court. And not even talking about his off the court stuff. He is so generous. I've heard stories of him, especially during tough times, where he's gone out and bought a bunch of pet food and dropped them off at different shelters. He's given tons back, feeding the community, giving back to the fans, always having fan events, Turner's Block, getting those people into the stadium, giving them the opportunity to rile up this ruckus crowd that was at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and is a big part of why that crowd is so ruckus, is Turner's Block. It's unbelievable how much Miles has grown in these 10 years in Indiana. It's funny because my mom texted me, and this is a true story. It's a lot of fun. I can't remember if he was in the exact same draft class. I think it was either Brandon Rush or Joe Young. I can't remember. I get mixed of who came in with him. But we're back in Indianapolis because I live in Orlando. I lived in South Carolina before. We'd moved from Indy when I was young. My family has always lived in Indianapolis, though. And so we'd always go back for holidays and stuff. And we were in Circle Center. And we were in the mall. We were shopping. I think it was at H&M or something. And sure enough, rookie Miles Turner comes walking in to the store. Forget who he was. That's why I was mentioning Joe Young and Brandon Rush. I think it was Brandon Rush, but I can't remember. It could have been Joe Young, somebody like that. It was a guard that he came in with, and he was working his way through the long aisles of clothing. And my mom, we went over to my mom, and my dad was standing over there too. And we're not really ones that really like to bother. I wouldn't say celebrities, but NBA players or anything like that. I don't know. It's just I don't really go out of my way to talk to them, mostly because I'm nervous, but two, also it's just I think back in the day we just felt like I don't want to approach him, right? He's just trying to shop. We don't really bothering him. Well, my mom, she goes over to him, and let's be honest, we knew it was Miles Turner. Like my dad, my mom, my brother, and I. But my mom was just like, I need to go make sure. So she walks over to him and goes, "Are you Miles Turner?" And he was like, "Yes, ma'am." like there was any doubt that it was Miles, right? That this 6'11" person is hanging out in Indianapolis on the off day and the Pacers play tonight. And, it was just, or tomorrow night. It was just funny to me just because it's like, that was clearly Miles, but just the calmness and how polite he was and giving his time to talk to us a little bit. And that was rookie Miles. So this kid from Texas who hasn't really made a name for himself at all. He's a draft pick, and a couple games in the season, my mom's already talking to him, and he's like, "Yep, that's me. I'm Miles." And he just gave us a little bit of time just to talk about the game the following night and stuff. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a memory that I'll always have because I love Miles, and we've all been critics at times, I think, of his game, but at the end of the day, I'm one that truly believes that give him a number in the rafters or build a statue for him, because he's been that crucial to what Indiana has been and what they've meant in the last decade that he's been there. So just an awesome experience yesterday, watching him lift the trophy, watching Ernie Johnson. And a lot of people are mad that they didn't call Tyrese up there too. I think that TNT, one, they were trying to wrap up their time covering the NBA, and they were trying to do that justice, right? And they were trying to get that in. So I understand they didn't do a huge, long award ceremony with the Pacers because they went back to their own desk and they were talking to Kevin Harlan, right? Allie LaForce. You had Stan there as well with Reggie. And so they were closing out a time in TNT and that chapter, and then they were going to throw it out to the desk. So they were going to give Tyrese time to talk out there. I think that was ultimately why Tyrese and Pascal show up to the desk back in the lobby in the atrium area. But it was so cool to me. And I don't know who made the decision. I'm pretty sure it was probably Ernie Johnson, because Ernie's very in tune with this kind of stuff. Ernie Johnson calls up Rick. That's when Rick gives you the line that starts out this podcast, this intro of, in 49 states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana. So he talks and he thanks the Gainbridge Fieldhouse fans, and he thanks, the Simons and the front office and believing in them, but also talks about how good the Knicks were in this series. And they were, even though they got booed during that. That was funny. But then obviously the Eastern Conference Finals MVP had to be crowned. So they do that with Pascal. They talk to Pascal. Pascal thanks Indiana, thanks Gainbridge Fieldhouse, thanks the front office and trusting with what they're doing. And then, a kid from Cameroon. I mean, Pascal Siakam, again, he was another person that was doubted in his time and is probably the most undervalued player in the whole NBA. If you're looking at underrated, he's probably top of the list. And so they were talking to Pascal, and Pascal thanks them for the award. And then Ernie Johnson makes it a point. He says, "Where's Miles Turner?" And meanwhile, I forgot to mention, Reggie Miller's up there. Ernie gave Reggie the opportunity to present them the trophies, which was so cool. And I know a lot of people online and stuff were talking about, why is he up there? What's he doing? He's not part of this team, blah, blah, blah. People don't understand what Reggie went through. And to be able to do this to the Knicks and to be able to do it in Gainbridge, to do what Reggie hadn't been able to really do. Reggie eliminated the Knicks, but in Madison Square Garden. Reggie never got to really celebrate anything except his last game in Gainbridge Fieldhouse, or what was then Conseco. So this was awesome. I mean, this is a team ambassador. This is somebody that is, I guarantee you, on a lot of different meetings and calls with Pacers front office during the offseason where he's giving his advice and talking to some of these young guys. We don't know what goes on off the court. We don't know how involved Reggie is, but from what I understand, and the other thing too is Reggie shows up in all black tonight along with Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner. I don't think that was a coincidence. I'm pretty sure Ty might have shot him a text saying, "Hey, we're wearing all black tomorrow. We'd love for you to join." And Reggie could have made a decision on his own, and he kind of claims he did. But you don't know the conversations, and I guarantee you Reggie's been with Tyrese Halliburton at times, maybe in the back, talking to Ty, or there's been moments where the front office has had him in to talk to the team or whatever it might be. But you know that these alumni are keeping tabs on these guys, and word gets out, word gets around, and that's why I'm excited about the NBA Finals. I think you'll see even more of the Pacers alum return, even just kind of your role players. I think CJ Miles said he was only going to the Pacers game if the Pacers made the finals, and now he's locked in. So that'll be fun to see Mos Fresco. I'd love to see guys like TJ Warren show up. Collison and them would be great, but the Davis brothers, Ron Artest, Steven Jackson all coming back, and they were here in the Eastern Conference Finals too. But like, I want to see like 50 alumni, right? Just random dudes too. Like, I want to see, is TJ Leaf out there? Like, I want to see just random guys that had such an impact. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I would love if Indianapolis and the Pacers accepted Victor Oladipo back. I think that would be a really cool gesture to get him back in Cambridge. And because so many of these guys have had such a huge impact on this franchise, and I just love to see some of these returning players. And we got to see Danny Granger, which is very strange because we don't ever really get to see. I don't think he's been back to Indianapolis, at least in the field house, since he got traded. But I would just love all these guys to come out and support this Pacers team. I mean, even you're talking about some of the coaching legends too, just some of those guys to come back. It would be pretty darn cool. And I know in the NBA Finals, I think I've actually seen some current, and even Chris Paul showed up to SGA's MVP thing. I'd love to see some of these, current NBA players that were Pacers at times, like a Paul George coming to Cambridge. Like, I'd have no issue with that. And he, bring Paul George. He was crucial in bringing Tyrese Halliburton to Indy, but he's good friends with Ty. Like, he's really good friends with Tyrese. And at the end of the day, eventually when it comes down to Paul George's time, he'll come back to Indianapolis and he'll be celebrated. I mean, it'll go that way. I don't think there's many people out there that have bad blood with Paul George anymore. And, there's a lot of people clamoring for Paul George to come be an option as a starter for this Pacer team when he was a free agent this year. Obviously, that's tough to try to bring him in on and how much he's been injured. But, I mean, hey, if he wants to come to Indianapolis at the end of this season and be a bench player, I'm more than welcome to have Paul George back. But, I mean, anyway, it would just be cool to see him show up. Obviously, Roy Hibbert's been there. But, like, David West we haven't seen. That'd be cool to see David if he'd come. But I'm just thinking about all these Pacers that back in the day, you just Sarunas Jasikevičius, right? It'd be a lot of fun just to have like just your random, like, oh, Jeff Foster, hadn't seen Jeff Foster. That'd be cool. So Austin Crozier. But I'm sure you'll see a lot of people come out of the woodworks for this NBA Finals run and stuff. So we shall see Game 3, which we'll read out the schedule and stuff, because I think a lot of people are going to be interested. So let's jump into transitioning in this episode, just because we spent enough talking about the NBA Finals and the Pacers heading there and how much it means for so many of these players, so many of these fans. And honestly, I was very nervous coming into Game 6. I'm not going to lie. I was running scenarios through my head, as probably some of you all were doing, as I was just like trying to find stuff to keep. Luckily, honestly, I wasn't too happy about leaving the house too late in the afternoon yesterday, but we left the house around 4 because we had to do some grocery shopping and stuff. And now that I look back on it, that was probably best, because otherwise I just kind of sat around and like listened to a bunch of things and really got myself overhyped and very nervous and anxious, just kind of sitting around waiting for the game. So at least we spent 2.5 hours outside the house where, we get back right at 7 when pregame starts and I start cooking dinner. And then we're right into the nitty gritty of the game, pregame stuff. And so I was occupied, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to really think about it. But the whole day yesterday, I'm just thinking about, all right, game 6. What if we lose? Can we win game 7? Could we win game 7? It's very weird for a team to lose 3 straight. Teams never, ever now come back from a 2 losses at home to start a 7-game series and still haven't because the Knicks didn't do it. But were we going to be that team? Like, were we going to look back on this season and go, what an opportunity we had to play for an NBA championship and just squandered the heck out of it? It felt that way after game 5. I mean, it's a good thing there was only a day in between, because if it was set up like the NBA Finals where you start to squander this lead, your 3-1 lead, it goes back 3-2, I think I would be like, what in the world? If I had to wait 2 more or like another day, that would have been brutal. But luckily, only a day in between for the Eastern Conference Finals. And, I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, what if we lose? Are we going to win game 7? Could we win game 7? Probably not. Probably not. Not back in Madison Square Garden where that crowd would have been off the walls because they would have known that they were just 1 win away after basically collapsing underneath themselves in the first 2 games. Come all the way back, storm all the way back, and you have the best player in the series, I would say, in Jalen Brunson. I mean, I don't think we're too far-fetched in saying that he's the best player in that stretch. I mean, obviously not defensively, but when you've got 2 great offensive players like Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, that is such a huge boost. And to do it at home, I don't think the Pacers would have been able to go back to Madison Square Garden and beat that Knicks team. I really didn't, just because the momentum would have been completely on the Knicks side. But we'll get into why the Pacers just didn't let that happen. I did want to read off the final schedule because I know a lot of people are going to be interested in it. So game 1 is going to take place on June 5th. So that is this coming Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. Game 2, Pacers at Thunder. So these first 2 games are at Oklahoma City. Game 2, Pacers at Thunder, June 8th, which is Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. Game 3, Thunder at Pacers, Wednesday, June 11th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. That's when you probably see a ton of people just come out of nowhere from past Pacer teams. I think it'd be a lot of cool to see them in the building. Heck, give them a couple suites. Give them courtside. Let them sit on the bench. Game 4, Thunder at Pacers, Friday, June 13th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. Game 5, if necessary, Pacers at Thunder, Monday, June 16th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. Game 6, Thunder at Pacers, Thursday, June 19th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. And Game 7, Pacers at Thunder, Sunday, June 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. So that is the layout for the NBA Finals. And as you will notice, there are 2 games in between each of the games, except for game 3 and 4 have just the 1 day in between, which is really weird. I don't know why. There must be some kind of scheduling conflict because it doesn't make sense. There's not that's not a travel day. So I don't understand why. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get why the why that game is from game 3 to game 4. There's a game or a day in between, whereas the other games there are 2 days in between, which is big for Aaron Nesmith. I mean, if you're looking at how beneficial time off is, I think Aaron Nesmith is probably the one that needed it the most, obviously, because he's banged up with that ankle. I think giving him 4 days before he has to go again is going to be vital to how he feels, and hopefully it doesn't tighten up too much on him and that it actually starts to really heal. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at 2 days in between each game. That is huge to recuperate and to game plan for the next game. I would give the Pacers an advantage because of that, just because Scott Daigle, is it Scott Daigle? I don't remember the guy's first name. That's next episode. I got to worry about all that. But Daigle is his last name, I believe. Thunder's head coach. Daigle's less experienced than Rick Carlisle. So I think Rick will have the advantage of having 2 days in between where you can look at what the Thunder do in game 1 and go, all right, what's the plan? How are we gonna adjust to what the Thunder did in game 1? So that'll be important. But again, like I said, there's only one game, and that's game between game 3 and 4 that there's a day in between rather than 2 days. So it's gonna be rough. I'm not gonna lie. Um, Having to wait that long, and then they play later. There's only 2 games at 8 o'clock. The other 5 would be at 8:30. So that's tough. The first game is at 8:30 on Thursday. It's gonna feel like an eternity to wait that long. But that's how championship rounds go. They always push it back to 8:30 for some reason. I don't understand what's the difference between 8 and 8:30. I really don't get it. I'll never understand it. I think Oklahoma City might be on Central Time question mark, whereas the Pacers are on Eastern Time. So maybe that's the difference. But 30 minutes, like that doesn't seem like it's significant enough. Like, what's 30 minutes going to do for you? Anyway, that's beyond my pay grade here on this podcast. But yes, the Indiana Pacers will take on the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA Finals. But before we get there, let's talk about Game 6. This is going to be a little bit of a longer episode, so I do apologize. But I feel like this is going to be an episode a lot of people are going to want to listen to. And there's just so much to live for in this episode. So prior to Saturday night's Game 6 matchup, a clip of Tyrese Halliburton arriving to the Pacers home arena at Gainbridge Fieldhouse was circulating online. The two-time NBA All-Star cut an imposing figure on walking down the corridor dressed in all black, referencing the Knicks doing the same thing in Game 6 last year at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So Tyrese is the ultimate troll. He really is. And I love him for it. I really do. It's very Reggie. And Reggie didn't grow up and live and play during a time of social media. Oh, he did live it. Now he's living in it. But he did not exist in NBA with social media. So I think it would have been really fun to have Reggie on social medias during during his playoff stretches with the Knicks. That'd be great. But you're seeing what this new NBA looks like, and it's with social media and how guys react. One of the best things that came out of Game 6 is Ben Stiller finds this tweet, and he tweets at it, he retweets it, quote tweets it, and he says, hey, he's got his duffel bag ready so they can get on that plane and head to New York for Game 7. Well, obviously, this is after Tyrese would have access to his phone. So Tyrese doesn't see it before the game. After the game, he must have saw it, or somebody said something to him about it, because you know that they've got that person on their team or in their family that sends them, hey, look what they sent. Hell, I would be surprised if Reggie wasn't the one that sent it. But you've got that person that's feeding you those things, right? Because they don't have time. Like, imagine what their phones look like after the game, like blowing up with friends and family or people they've never heard from in years that are texting them and all sorts of crazy things. Like, their phones are probably blown off the hook. But Tyrese comments about it, and he says, nah, y'all, I brought the duffel bag so I could pack y'all up and send you home. So he went right back at Ben Stiller. And then Ben Stiller said, congratulations, job well done, good luck against OKC. Ben's right. Like, that's fun, right? That's a lot of fun. And I love Ben Stiller. He's a great actor. He's a great person, great human being. But it's fun to kind of give them a little bit of chirp. So yeah, it was really interesting that Tyrese went with that. But again, it was every single one of the Knicks players. I think it was only, from what I remember or saw, I think only Miles, Tyrese, maybe Obi Toppin, but there are only a couple. Now, the head coaches did wear all black, but I think that was just their jumpsuit. I don't know if that's necessarily true that they were wearing all black, because that seems like a very weird thing for Rick Carlisle. But again, Rick Carlisle and them were the ones that did it to the Miami Heat. And Rick, because Brendan Haywood is on NBA TV, and he said that Rick was the one behind wearing the all black to the Game 6 that the Mavs beat the Heat in Miami. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Rick was behind that. But, you've seen some teams kind of shy away from it because they're like, well, what if we lose? Or what if the other team sees this and it's added fuel? So I think some teams lean away from it, but Tyrese has always kind of leaned into it. He's done it a couple times and they've closed out the team. So, hey, if you can back it up, by all means. I mean, it's their funeral, right? So that's why you're wearing the all black. It was funny. And I think it adds to more storyline for this Knicks team to be angry with the Pacers once again, and we'll get into how frustrated they got. But just overall, I thought leading into this game, it just had all the feelings of a game 7. Pacers really needed to win it. I really felt that way. I was thinking if we go back to the Garden, my confidence in winning that game was probably 30%, because the Knicks would have all of the momentum and all they would need was to go on one of their runs, and that would end the Pacers season, because they have, again, 2 offensive players that can go for 35 a night, where the Pacers don't really have that. So it felt like the momentum was swaying and it didn't feel good. Well, going into the first quarter, we're going to read some key things that came from each of the quarters. So, first quarter, there were 3 ties and 5 lead changes. And actually, the New York Knicks, last time they had led, or the only time that they would have the lead, how am I trying? I'm trying to say this right. So the Knicks, never, sorry, there we go. Trying to think. The Knicks never had the lead again after the 2:31 mark in the first quarter. The Pacers led from that point on throughout the whole game. There were some ties, obviously. Knicks got back into it in the second quarter a couple times, but they never took the lead again after the first quarter with 2 minutes and 31 seconds left. Jalen Brunson was great to start. I mean, he was powering that offense. The Knicks get off to a 9-4 run in the first quarter, and it was a good opening for the Knicks. And I was like, oh no, this is bad, because Jalen Brunson got off to a very hot start. He ends with 7 points and 2 assists in the first. Miles Robinson. Mitchell Robinson had 6 points and 6 boards. I think 5 offensive rebounds in the first quarter. It looked like the recipe for disaster for Indiana, because Indiana was not really valuing the ball as much. They were playing fast, but it was kind of sloppy fast. Like, it was very game 7 where everything was kind of just, it was sloppy because of how intense the game was, not sloppy in the way that they were just playing. It was because there was a lot of physicality, great defense, great shot making. The Knicks start hot, and the Pacers kind of cold to start with. Tyrese Halliburton goes 0 for 4 in the first quarter. It didn't have a good feel. Like, Mikal Bridges was picking him up 94 feet, and I thought for sure that was going to be the one adjustment we definitely saw, but we not once, and I tweeted it, not once did I see, and especially in that first half, they didn't really alleviate the pressure on Tyrese Halliburton, which I find concerning going forward in this OKC series, because you've got to get him going downhill, and the best way to do that is, why isn't Pascal Siakam or Miles Turner, why aren't they staying behind and just kind of doing that screen up the floor where they're just holding their hands up, running, going, you're not going to get to him? Like, screen in the backcourt. I don't understand why Rick didn't do that in this game. And I feel like that's something that they're going to have to look at, because Mikal Bridges in the first quarter kept Tyrese Halliburton right where the Knicks wanted him. I mean, he was starting the offense at the half court line and could barely get it started. He was all the way out by the logo trying to start this offense every single time down the floor. I was like, what are they doing? Like, this is the one thing I thought they would have figured out how to at least free him up. I think the one thing that the Knicks do well that I think other teams have struggled with is the length of Mikal Bridges and how long his arms are caused Tyrese a lot of problems, where I actually do think that's something that the Thunder don't really have, that really, really lanky, long, especially like, because Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns were the ones they were attacking on those screens. But I thought Brunson did a really nice job. And I know that OKC's defense is historic, and we'll figure out how to guard Tyrese. And I think that's one of the biggest keys in that series is it's going to be Tyrese Halliburton. Like, if he's ineffective, they're going to get absolutely destroyed. But I really do feel like the Knicks, for some reason, with Mikal Bridges, that causes more of a problem because of how lengthy his arms are. It's a really weird thing, but if you watch the game, because of how lanky he is and how good he is moving side to side at times, it caused Tyrese some problems, where I feel like I don't know. I'm going to have to look at the Thunder more, but I really don't believe that putting him, like J-Dub on him or Dort at times, maybe, that they're really going to have much of an answer one-on-one with Tyrese. Now, they're a good defensive team, great defensive team, right? One of the best ever. But there are some things when I was watching back on the film, while Tyrese was passive, I felt Tyrese was passive because one, the Pacers didn't really ever play them at full health. And two, there were some things that I think the Pacers were still trying to work through with Tyrese. And this is before Tyrese really started to get engaged as he was later on in the season. There's a lot of things that were different when the Thunder saw them the, the last time. So we'll talk about that in the next preview series. But I've got some confidence in something that I've seen looking back at those other games against the Thunder that I'm not sure a lot of people are really looking at. But anyway, I digress. Miles Turner leads Indiana with 6 points in the first quarter, and New York was out rebounding Indy 15-7. Again, this was all recipe for disaster. Tyrese Halliburton wasn't going anywhere. He was 0 for 4 from the field in the first quarter. He was silent. I mean, you couldn't find him. Defensively, Aaron Nesmith gets into really early foul trouble off of a really stupid foul. I think he was trying to get an offensive rebound. Like, I think there was like 10 minutes left in the first, and he tries to reach over and smack a ball away from Mitchell Robinson, maybe, and he fouls him. I'm like, what was that? Like, why'd you do that? And he'll do that every once in a while. He'll pick up a foul, and you're like, why'd you do that? And he didn't need to do that. And then his second foul, too, wasn't great. But both off of Jalen Brunson. They weren't on Jalen Brunson, who he was assigned to initially. Come to find out, though, Carlisle, and I think it was more of they had planned this because Aaron Nesmith's ankle, less of like Aaron Nesmith getting into foul trouble. He says it was like part of what the scheme was going to be, but I think it had a lot to do with foul trouble plus ankle. You didn't really want Aaron Nesmith in those precarious situations. So at 10:31 is when Andrew Nembhard steals the ball off an inbound from Jalen Brunson. It's because of the pressure that Nembhard was putting on Jalen Brunson at 10:31 in the first. That's right from there. Andrew Nembhard looked like that player, which he's not looked against Jalen Brunson. He's looked like this against other people in the league. Like, he's done this to multiple people in the league, including some of SGA, where he is putting you in Nim hell, right? We call it Nim hell in Pacerland. And that's when you really started to notice a big difference in the defensive pressure that the Pacers were going to start to put on the Knicks. Now, it's not till the second half that you really notice it, but I thought there were really good stretches defensively in the first and second quarter, mostly because of Nembhard, and it was really him on Jalen Brunson. It's not until the third quarter where you see everybody stepping up that pressure defensively. But the Pacers were just getting everything going against them in the first quarter. Now, people will talk about the fouls, and I'll address that here because it's early and it happened throughout the game where obviously people are like, oh, they're worried because they think the NBA, they're into this conspiracy that the NBA needed the Knicks to be in the finals against the Thunder, where I think what Adam Silver's trying to do, making it an even playing field, while yes, it's awful for TV ratings, the NBA has done a really good job of evening the playing field. Oklahoma City, small market team. Indiana, small market team. They will meet in the finals. That doesn't usually happen, right? And it's because they don't allow these big three teams to exist anymore because of the tax aprons, which has been great for the league. And if you're a fan of the league, I don't care if you're a fan of the Knicks or the Celtics or Lakers. Like, yes, I get it. Your biggest thing is like, whoa, we should be in the finals because the NBA, this is going to be an awful series because we're not in it. Well, if you hear that rhetoric online, it's because they're a Laker fan, a Boston fan, a Knick fan, a Heat fan. They're fans of huge fan bases and huge markets. They're the ones that are going to say this crap on Twitter, and it's just stupid. If you like basketball, you know that this could have the potential to be an excellent series because you've got the number one defense versus the number two offense in the league. And historically, over the last 2 years, I guess it's not historic, but over the last 2 years, one of the best offenses is historically in the Pacers, and the Thunder aren't too bad on offense either. So you've got this collision of really good teams that I think the NBA is really, I think at the end of this series, we're going to all look back and go, man, that was a great series between the Thunder and the Pacers, because I saw a great video. There's a video that's going around on X that's called Thunder are Oil, the Pacers are Water. And there's a really cool explanation as to why. It's a great hype video it's like a pregame hype video. It's really cool. I forget who did it, but I saw it going around on X. So I'll try to retweet it if I remember to do it after this episode. But I thought it was awesome. But yes, quarter one, everything, right, was going trending Knicks. Good defense. Knicks. Good rebounding. Knicks. 7 points, 2 assists for Jalen Brunson. Not good for the Pacers because he was hot. He was getting off to a real good start. Aaron Nesmith in foul trouble. Andrew Nembhard, difficult time guarding Jalen Brunson. Tyrese Halliburton, pretty much nowhere to be found. It was very tough, but the Pacers were able to kind of manage it, right? But it was a low-scoring affair. And again, I've said this multiple times. If the games are low-scoring, it favors the other team because the Pacers, that's what they do. They want to get out. They want to run. They want to cause you problems on the offensive end, defensive end. Well, offensive end for them, defensive end for their opponent. But the Knicks were doing a nice job, I thought. Even though they were turning the ball over quite a bit, I still felt like the Knicks were doing exactly what they needed to do to stay in the game. So it was 25-24 at the end of the first quarter. Pacers have the advantage, and that's really all you need. Win each quarter, and you win the game. So it was okay, right? 25-24, though, that seemed to have favored the Knicks because the Pacers, when they really beat the crap out of teams, is when they start scoring 30 in a quarter, and they do that quite often when they're going really well. So this was kind of a concern, but first quarter, I was like, all right. And you could tell it had that game 7 feel, even though it was only game 6. It had that knock the ball around, and it looked like a pinball sometimes, and there were some missed shots, and then there were some really great shots, but it looked like guys were nervous and anxious and wanting to get it, into the flow of the game. There were some fouls early on. It just kind of clunky at first, and into the second quarter, it continued. After a low-scoring quarter for the first quarter, the Pacers dropped 33 in the second, so the Pacers' offense looked better, but defensively, again, they really weren't doing much to kind of hinder except Jalen Brunson. And Karl Anthony Towns was awful in this game. The stat line might say, well, he's got 22 points and he had double-digit rebounds. He must have been good. He missed a ton of shots, and I'm talking, they weren't even close. I mean, his first 3, I think it was his first 3, he clanked off the left side of the rim and the back of the rim. It was bad. I was like, what was that? He about missed the whole goal. It was awful. It was a horrible shot. It was kind of in a weird spot too. I don't know. It was very strange. But at the half, again, Pacers shooting 51% from the field and 53 from the 3-point line. That's where you really start to see, I think, when I looked at the stats at halftime, I was like, oh, okay, this is really good for the Pacers because, yes, they were getting crushed on the glass, but they were making up for it in turnovers and fast break points, because you can lose the offensive rebounding battle by a couple of rebounds and you can lose some second chance points. But if you are turning teams over in double digits in a half, that's when the other team's going, oh, shoot, this isn't good. The turnover battle was 9-5 at halftime. The Knicks had 9, Pacers had 5. So I was really happy about that. And then at the half, the Pacers had outscored the Knicks in points off turnovers 16-2. If you look back in the history of the NBA in any of these games, teams that lead by double digits in the turnover points on turnovers, I think it's probably got to be in the 90 percentile of you winning. It's got to be that high. You cannot turn the ball over this much, and you cannot let them score off of turnovers this much. You look at the fast break points. Pacers were leading there too. So everything was happening everything that was happening in the second quarter was starting to trend better towards the Pacers, shooting 51%. It's hard to beat them when they shoot 50. I think when the Pacers shoot 50%, they've not lost but 3 or 4 games all season. They shoot 53% from the 3-point line. They're hard to beat. When they're making 3-pointers, this team is difficult to handle, just for any defense, no matter who they are. Pascal Siakam leads all players in 16 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. And OG Anunoby was really good. And the Pacers kind of go on a little run there to end the second quarter. And OG Anunoby hit one at the buzzer that was crucial, because had that not happened, I was like, all right, Knicks are completely done now. I didn't know what was going to happen in the third quarter, so it didn't really matter. But OG Anunoby closed out the second quarter. I'm like, dang, that's the one you really didn't want him to do, because that could get him going. And I mean, he already had 15 or 14 points. I'm like, this could be a really good OG game. And then Brunson's going to come on soon, right? Like he's gonna start scoring. Towns is going to start scoring. Like, it's hard to keep these guys quiet because they've had a really awful first half. And just let's look at the numbers for both of them through the first half, because I thought the Pacers did such an excellent job. 3 of 10 for Karl Anthony Towns on 30%. He was 0 of 3 from the three-point line, and every single one of those threes were clunkers. 2 of 2 from the free throw line. He had 7 rebounds, though. He was doing a really nice job on the glass. He had 8 points. He was a -6, Karl Anthony Towns. And then Jalen Brunson in the first half, 4 of 10. He shot 40%. He was 1 of 3 from 3, 1 of 2 from the line. He had 4 assists, but he also had 3 turnovers and was only a +2. He had 10 points. This was Andrew Nembhard. Like, this was all Andrew Nembhard making. I mean, it was every shot was a fight. I mean, there was one point, I think it's in the, I'm trying to remember because it was on that side of the court. So that'd have been the first half. There was a point in the first half where, no, sorry, second half. It was the second half. There's a part in the second half where Andrew Nembhard tees him up, and the Pacers play good enough defense where they were out dancing around the half court line, like not going anywhere, with their head down, trying to dribble around Nembhard and Pascal, who was out there, I think it was, or Toppin. And they're just dribbling around. It took like 18 seconds to get anywhere. It was funny. But I mean, it would just show you just how intense Andrew Nembhard was. But we'll talk a little bit more about him, and individually we'll talk about all these players. But Jalen Brunson, really bad first half. Karl Anthony Towns, really bad first half. And the Knicks did shoot 50% from the field, but they were only 27% from 3. So that was benefiting the Pacers. But I mean, without OG Anunoby in this first half, who had 14, and Mikal Bridges, who had 11, this Knicks team, they had got blown out like early, like blown completely out of the water. But because those two show up in a really big game, I mean, kudos to them. They've been looking for a really big series from Mikal, and Mikal just hadn't had it. OG Anunoby, I thought, had a really good season this year and continued to be a thorn. But I just don't think the pace that the Pacers play with really, I think it hurts Anunoby at times. But yeah, you look at their totals in this game, right? Karl Anthony Towns, 8 of 19, 42% from the field, 0 of 4 from 3, didn't make a single three-pointer. He was 6 of 10 from the free throw line. This is where I want to talk about it. If you go back and look at the Karl Anthony Towns free throws, even I think he made 2 as well that like bounced around the rim and like he like kind of pushed up there. Here's my thing. If I'm a Knicks fan, or if I'm somebody that has an interest in the Knicks, even Pacer fans, where were you, Cat? Like, you had 22 points and you had 14 rebounds, but you sure didn't play like that. 42% from the field, and you were 0 4 from 3. And his free throws, there were 3 of them. You can go count that. There are 3 definitely that he just short arms. He short arms, crocodile arms them, and that's nerves. That's nothing else. But like, I've played the game enough to know when you short arm that bad at the free throw line, it's because you've got no confidence in what you're doing. And you could just tell in the way he went up to the line. He looked like somebody. It looked like Patrick Ewing back in the day, John Starks when they got nervous. It looked like that again. Cat got these big eyes like, oh no, like this isn't going to go well. And he missed 4 of them, like, and they weren't even close. Then he made 2 that like he short armed them, but luckily they hit the top of the front of the rim, and it bounced back and forth and went in. But he looked scared. There were multiple times in this series where he just looked, and honestly, game 3, until he came on, he looked scared. He looked scared of the moment. And, you know, I know his knee was bothering him, but there was a funny part in the first half of the game. I just saw it because I'm watching the game on the side over here, like as a rewind. I'm kind of looking over every once in a while. But there's a point where I know he's banged up and he's got some knee, but there is part of me that thinks that he wasn't as hurt. Like, you know, I hate to question that, but like, it did seem weird that whenever he got the ball offensively, I don't think he really, that knee, I don't know how much that was really bothering him because like he was moving fine on half of it. Like it makes you wonder. It's like that's kind of weird. But anyway, I digress. Like that's mean to probably question somebody like that. But he just, I just don't like him. I don't understand. But anyway, back to the game. OG Anunoby, 24 points. He was huge. I mean, like I said, without the way that he played and without the way that Mikal Bridges played on the defensive side and offensive side, this Knicks team would have got absolutely blown out. Because Jalen Brunson, 8 of 18, he was 44%, 28.6% from the 3-point line, 50% from the free throw line, only had 19 points. He had 5 turnovers. And we'll get to the Andrew Nembhard effect coming up here after this, because if you're on the YouTube channel, you can see my talking points, and that is what is up next. But I'm going to talk about what was the adjustment, because the Pacers go into the half up 4, and they come out and go on a 9-0 run. What was the difference? Defense. 100%. They came out in the third quarter, and they've done this a lot, and this is when they've been successful, at least the most successful. And if they play defense like this, and if honestly, if I'm Rick Carlisle, I'm pulling the way that this team played defense in this second half and showing them this is what we need to beat the Thunder. Because the Thunder are not a great three-point shooting team. They like to get to the line. They like to cause you problems and disruption and get offensive rebounds. They like to score in the paint. They are not a good three-point. Like, I think people have in their mind they're this great three-point. They're not a great three-point shooting team. They have good three-point shooters, but they are collectively not been a very great, high-efficient three-point shooting team in this playoffs and in the season. So you can definitely kind of settle for them taking threes. So if you're the Pacers, the way that they defended the Knicks, it's going to be a lot different on how they're, because now you go from having to worry about Mitchell Robinson, who's the best offensive rebounder in the league, to less of a rebounder in Hartenstein. Like, Hartenstein's good, but we've seen him before. We know what that looks like. We saw it last year with the Knicks. He's good offensive rebounder, but he's not like Mitchell Robinson where he's going to get one every time. And to be honest with you, like, they're a good offensive rebounding team, the Thunder, but a lot of it's because Chet gets in there. And I just felt like, looking at the games that they've played, I watched a lot of that Denver OKC series because I figured those two were going to be the teams that we really had to worry about if we were going to get to the finals. And when I watched those games, it was more of long missing than it was offensive rebound. Like, Chet would come flying in from the perimeter to get those offensive rebounds and stuff. I don't feel like that they're not like the Knicks in that way. Like, Mitchell Robinson's only goal is to get offensive rebounds, where I think they don't really have that kind of player with the Thunder. Hartenstein would be the closest thing, maybe Caruso. But again, I feel like the Pacers have an advantage where they're not going to face a team that has like Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson again, who are just, that's all they're out there for, is to get offensive rebounds, it seems. And Cat is a big size issue where I don't think Chet and Isaiah are really that big of a challenge as far as like Turner and them just can't handle them. Like, Turner can handle Hartenstein. Pascal will be able to handle Chet. And so I think there's an advantage that they all have in that series compared to what they've had in this last series, where they can't guard Karl Anthony Towns. Like, when Towns is going as he's going, you just can't guard him. He's very good getting into the rim. And then Mitchell Robinson's just, he'll overpower anybody on that Pacer team. But I kind of long-winded to say the Pacers really changed things defensively, and they're going to have to do that on the defensive end against the Thunder, like what they did in that second half. Because when the second half starts, Andrew Nembhard was a pest. He was all over Jalen Brunson. Brunson gets to the point where I think it's the fourth quarter where he's just had enough of Nembhard, and he goes John Starks on him, and he headbutts Andrew Nembhard, and Nembhard gives the Reggie like oh, what the heck was that? And they didn't see it. Otherwise, Brunson would have gotten a technical, definitely got a technical. But the whole game, you could just see Brunson was just pissed. He was so mad at what's going on with Nembhard, because Nembhard has never really been able to shut him down at all. I think he shot over 60% with Nembhard on him ever since last year, all the way up through game 6 of this year. Nembhard just had no answer for him. And I've tweeted about this. I've talked about this. I'm like, for some reason, he's the only guy in the whole league that Nimhard seems to really struggle with. I don't understand why either, because they're about the same size. So I didn't understand that. But then it happens. He flipped some script and he went into full Nim hell and completely shut down Jalen Brunson. So in the third quarter, Indiana has scored the first 8 points of the third quarter and took a game high 12-point lead. Once the Pacers got running, it just became a track meet. And then the Pacers outscored the Knicks at fast break points 13-2 at this point. Pacers playing their game, running up and down the floor every possession. There were multiple times in the end of the second quarter, beginning of the third, even into the fourth, where the Pacers were getting fast break points off of Knicks made baskets. That's how crazy the Pacers run and how bad transition defense the Knicks are, which will be a different story for Oklahoma City. They're the best transition defense. So that'll be something that the Pacers are going to have to figure out how to work in the half court, because there's going to be some half court possessions that they're going to have to obviously take with Oklahoma City. Way more than any team they've faced this far. They're not going to be able to outrun them at times like they've been able to do the other teams in the past. But yes, they go on to outscore the Knicks in that frame 34-23, and that ultimately just is the difference. Once that 9-0 run happens, the Knicks answer, I think, with a 7-0 run or a 9-0 run to kind of match it and get back within 4 or 5. And then all of a sudden the Pacers took off again and went on like a 14-0 run or something. And the Pacers just dominated. I mean, they would let them back in, but then just smacked them in the face once they started to get back in it. But Indiana outscored the Knicks off of turnovers 32-6. In fast break points, 23-6. Pascal Siakam leads all players with 26 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks after the third. And the Pacers knew that a clean quarter, normal quarter, away from advancing to the NBA Finals. So Indiana led for all but a few minutes in this game, taking control with that third quarter. And they actually win every single quarter, which was the goal. The Pacers outscore the Knicks in points off of turnovers throughout the whole game, 34-13. Fast break points, 25-10. Indiana shot 54% from the field and 52% from three-point range, while holding the Knicks to 48% from the field and 28% from long range. And that's ultimately the difference. The Pacers start to go on this crazy scoring fast break run where at the end of the fourth quarter, it was just the Pacers smacking them and smacking them and smacking them. It was like, oh my gosh. And they ultimately get up by 19, I think, in the fourth. And it's an Andrew Nembhard 3 that just ices the cake and sends the Knicks home. They're going to Cancun, guys, because the Indiana Pacers came out and played one of their best games that they've played in these playoffs to eliminate the Knicks before the Knicks could even get a chance in Game 7 to try to advance to their first NBA final since 1999. So the Knicks, once again, are championship-less drought. It now extends to 26 years. It will be 27 probably. But yeah, Pascal Siakam led Indiana with 31 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks. Tyrese Halliburton, 21 points, 6 rebounds, 13 assists, and 3 steals. And can I just say, they had to keep the pace, right? The Pacers were up, double digits in the beginning of the fourth. And the Knicks would eventually, I think, get it back down to 7, but then the Pacers would ultimately take it back to like that 12-14 range again. And then all of a sudden they just blew the lid off. But they wouldn't have done that without what Tyrese did in the fourth. Tyrese Halliburton in the fourth quarter was the closer. We've been looking for that, right? We've been looking for all season long and throughout his time here. It's the one thing I felt like the Pacers, I mean, Pascal can do it, but it's something the Pacers really lack is a closer. And we got that performance from Tyrese Halliburton now. 2 games in this series where I felt like he just broke the neck of people. And I feel like he is getting to a point where that's where he's going to shine. And that's huge because that will help confidence-wise. That will help with his clutchness because of how clutch he is. He wants that moment. So in 8 minutes and 25 seconds, Tyrese Halliburton was 5 of 6 from the field, 1-of-1 from three-point land. That three-pointer was the one at the end that he hit that basically the crowd erupted because they knew where they were headed. He had 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and 11 points. And the 5-6, I want to say there were 4 at least floaters that he just broke down the defense, and Karl Anthony Towns drop coverage, Mitchell Robinson drop coverage, and they just didn't know what to do. Like, they didn't know what was going on. I don't even think it was Mitchell Robinson. I think it was OG, or not OG. It was OG Anunoby only played 8 seconds. That can't be right. No, that's not right. This is Oh, sorry. I was like, they hit the one. On my NBA stat thing, it said 8 seconds, OG Anunoby in the fourth. I was like, that's not right. But anyway, yeah, no. Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns kind of dropped into a drop coverage against Tyrese, and Tyrese just took it to the paint and had easy baskets. He made really good floaters in front of Mikal Bridges at times where Mikal would be right behind him, and Tyrese, to kind of just throw him off, would get right. I'm actually just watching one right now. It's the one I was thinking about, where he dribbles to about the logo, and then he takes off from the logo on a pick. And because Mikal Bridges gets picked, he's trailing behind him, and Tyrese gets in front of him to where he can't get around him, and he shoots it in front of him, which we've seen multiple times. He ended a Bucks series like that last year. But yeah, this was overall one of the best performances I've seen from Tyrese Halliburton in the fourth quarter in his time in Indiana, with 11 points and the closeout, because they really needed that. They needed somebody to. They were up 12-14, I think, at the beginning of the third, but they needed somebody to just keep that pace, and he did. He said that this is the end for you. You are done. And he seals the deal. Pacers go on to win this game 125-108 and advance to their first NBA Finals since the year 2000. And they looked like a team that can do this for years to come, because they just, the depth, the pace, the still the youth that they have, the core that they have, the intelligence, the ability to hang on to the basketball. Like, the fact that this team doesn't turn the ball over, and when they do, they match it with just great performances as far as assist numbers. And to be honest, I felt like they could have been a little bit better in game 6. Obviously, holding on to the basketball, they still had 12 turnovers. But again, to even say that that's almost uncharacteristic, that's crazy with how good this team has been. They like to keep it under the double digits as far as turnovers are concerned. They're going to have to do that against OKC, because OKC is one of the best teams ever to get turnovers. So that's something that the Pacers are going to have to do. They're going to have to value the basketball, which I think if there is a team that can value the basketball more than anybody else in the league, it is the Pacers, outside of OKC, because OKC also values the basketball very well, and they are really good at not turning the ball over. They lead the NBA postseason with the least amount of turnovers. But like I said, it's so vital to have a closer, to have somebody that doesn't turn the ball over, like a Tyrese Halliburton, who, you look at the end of the game, he did have 4 turnovers. That's pretty high for Tyrese. And he still had one of his best performances in this series with 21 points, had 13 assists, 6 boards, and he was a plus 24 on the court. And again, his defensive pressure, I think, goes unnoticed too. He was really good defensively against Mikal Bridges in that second half as well. So that was big for the Pacers to get Tyrese to where he's a serviceable defender now, is such a lift for this team, because they really struggled trying to hide him at times in last postseason and into the regular season. So huge game from Pascal and Tyrese and Andrew Nembhard, right? So let's talk about Andrew Nembhard. So Andrew was 6 of 12 from the field, 50%, 2 of 5 from 3, he was 40%. He had 3 rebounds, 8 assists, 6 steals, and he stripped Jalen Brunson a couple times. Just absolutely took the ball away, got into great positions. Tyrese Halliburton had a couple tips that were landed in the hands of Siakam and Nembhard. Tyrese, there was one where I think the Knicks were down 7, and the Knicks had stolen the ball and were on a fast break, and Tyrese like jumps in front of this pass and steals it right back, and it was a huge turning point in the game too. So the Pacers stomped that out, and it was because of Tyrese Halliburton's defense. But the fact that he and Nembhard almost combined for 10 steals in that game was great. I mean, Tyrese was really good defensively. Andrew Nembhard, though, like I said, he held Jalen Brunson to 19 points. Jalen Brunson was easily averaging, I think, over 30 points in this series. I want to go check. I'll forget exactly how many points that JB was averaging in this series, because I forgot to look that up before, because I'm going to pull that stat. Brunson in this postseason averaged 29.4. I'm going to have to filter it one sec. I'm going to filter it against the Pacers because, again, he and Karl Anthony Towns have owned the Pacers. Rightfully so, though. They're very good players. I will give them that. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do the Knicks, not the Pacers. I was talking about the Pacers, and I accidentally clicked their name instead of the New York Knicks. So the New York Knicks, like I said, 29.4 in the postseason this year. And against the Pacers in this postseason, Jalen Brunson was averaging 30.7 points per game. Well, no, sorry, that would have now includes this game. But so he was over 30% when he came in, 30 points per game in this series. So to shut him down to 19 points, the Knicks didn't have a chance. Like, if you said at the beginning of this game, Jalen Brunson scores 19 points, I would have said the Pacers killed him. Like, the Pacers ran them over. And they did. I mean, they won by 17. But, yeah, when Jalen Brunson scores 19, you're going to win most of those games against the New York Knicks because they need him to score 25 plus, at least. So, to do that was huge. They did get really good production from OG. Karl Anthony Towns, for Karl Anthony Towns, 22 points. That's really good defense. Like, for Pascal Siakam as well. But Andrew Nembhard, if he guards people like this, it's going to be very difficult for you to win basketball games because he just eliminates your best player. Now, there are going to be a lot of discussions who gets the SGA assignment. I think a lot to be seen there. I could see both Nembhard and Nesmith getting a run at him. I would think to begin this series, it'll probably be Nesmith, but we'll see. Because if Nembhard can do this, then you throw him on SGA every night and say good luck. So we'll see. I look back at some of the tape, and I think one of the games Nesmith was out for, so it was hard to tell what the lineup was. And then the game that he came back, I forget, somebody else I thought was out or something. But I think it was Nembhard that was guarding SGA. So we'll see. And I'm going to have to pull that for the stats. I'm going to see if I can try to find who's better defensively against SGA and who is better in the regular season. Because I'm assuming that Nembhard got that assignment during the regular season because that's typically how that went. But yeah, Andrew Nembhard, an absolute dog. Obi Toppin, to do this against your old team, he was finishing he was a great finisher in this game. And every time he got to the rim, I was like, oh, yeah, that's going in. It was one of those Obi Toppin games where you're just like, once he got going towards the rim, you're like, oh, that's going to go in. He just adjusts so well to the pressure around the rim. And I thought he was probably fourth most important player on this team last night. I would say in order of importance game-wise, I'd say Pascal Siakam number 1, Nembhard number 2, Tyrese number 3, and then Obi Toppin. I mean, Tyrese was really good, so he and Nembhard, I think, are neck and neck just because of how well defensively Nembhard was on Brunson. But you look at Obi Toppin, 18 points, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks. He was 7 of 11, 2 of 4 from 3. He took it to his old team and had 18 points. I mean, I thought he was fantastic in this game and well-deserved breakout performance for Obi, who hadn't had the great series, but I felt like one of these games was coming, and luckily it did in Game 6. Thomas Bryant. I didn't think I'd be talking about Thomas Bryant in Game 6 as far as importance. Thomas Bryant had 11 points off the bench. He was 3 of 5 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, and had 3 of the biggest corner threes I think a lot of Pacers have ever had. Like, it was nuts. He went on this stretch. He hit 2 back-to-back. It was insane. I mean, just nothing but net, too. I mean, they were just right through the bottom of the net. And what a crucial part of this game because the Knicks were kind of in that 7-8 range. They were starting to kind of get going offensively, and then all of a sudden Thomas Bryant's like, nope. And to play in place of Tony Bradley, who did not play, who was available but had that hip strain and really didn't move very well. That's what Rick said at the end of the game. He just wasn't moving at all. But I mean, if he had to play, he had to play. But they went with Thomas Bryant first, and boy, are they glad they did, just because of how big he's been. And yes, I know he didn't really play in that NBA Finals win that the Lakers had, but or it might have just Lakers had, but he was so calm in this game and did almost everything right. I mean, there was one basket he missed that was an easy layup, and he just let Thomas Bryant did, because he does one every once in a while that it's like, how did he miss that? He just got too excited. But yeah, he misses a layup. Other than that, he was great. He had a huge block that really was a much needed block at the time to keep the momentum from shifting again. And again, this Pacers team just took it to the Knicks tonight. Tyrese, the closer, we already talked about, but just I want to mention it here again. He was just so good in everything that he did past the first quarter. I mean, he didn't even get started really in the first half, but to close out the game with 11 points, and he only had 10 in the other quarters, just an unbelievable performance from arguably the face of this franchise for years going forward. But just tremendous effort by Tyrese, and hitting those floaters it was such a big time lift for this Pacer team. He went 9 of 17 from the field, 52%, 2 of 5 from 3, and had 13 assists. Because I think they said he had assisted on every single point that the Pacers had at some point in the fourth quarter, either assisted on it or had scored it. And I think it was like 20 something points straight. Like, it was crazy on the run he went on in the fourth quarter. Pascal Siakam, Eastern Conference Finals MVP, 10 of 18 from the field, 55%, 60% from 3. He was huge. He hit some big threes tonight. He was 8 of 11 from the free throw line, which again is something he's continued to struggle with. I think they said he was under 60% in the postseason at the free throw line, which is awful. And you want it to be better. Maybe it was 70, but still, even then, just not shooting the ball very well from the free throw line, which can be concerning. He did have 3 blocks, though, 3 assists, and a steal. So he was good defensively. I thought he was a big problem for Karl Anthony Towns. And this is something that we'll talk about in the Thunder's thing, but Thunder's preview. But Chet Holmgren's really good. But I do believe Pascal Siakam is obviously the more experienced and could cause Chet some issues if that ends up being the matchup they go with, or if the Thunder goes smaller. I actually do think that Miles has a pretty good chance of defending him, because Chet's just not big. Like, he's just not a bigger guy. Like, he's tall, lanky tall, but his strength, I think, will be challenged when it comes to playing a more experienced Turner or Siakam. So that'll be an interesting matchup. The front court battle is actually really interesting. We'll talk about that in our preview for the Thunder, which will come out probably on Monday or Tuesday, because I'm hoping to record that at some point today as well. So we'll do a preview there, and then hope that there's no injury news. I mean, the one big thing that's come out of this game is Jarris Walker turned his ankle real bad, but Rick alluded to it and said that he hadn't seen Jarris. He saw him on crutches, but he also said, good thing he's young. So that makes me think it was just a sprain, that it's not anything more than that, but it did not look good. It was gross. But again, I think because he's younger, it's easier to bounce back from that. Like, your muscles just aren't as stiff for a younger guy. But this break will be huge. Pacers knock off the Knicks, and we'll move on to play the best team in the NBA all season long, the Oklahoma City Thunder. And there's just so much to talk about in that series, and we'll recap that in an NBA Finals preview. We'll probably do a couple episodes leading up to the NBA Finals, because I want to at least I might try to reach out to one of the Thunder podcasts to see if they'll come on, but we'll see how that goes. And then, I just want to do a couple things leading up to the NBA Finals. So I'm definitely going to do a preview show, and I'll probably do one that's here, and then if I have to change it, I can do another episode later on to kind of adjust to maybe some news that comes out. If there's, really it's Jarris Walker and maybe some Aaron Nesmith news if Aaron's, feeling good. And then maybe talking about some reactions from the press conferences and stuff. But I think we'll try to fit in 2 episodes before the NBA Finals and leading up to it. Definitely a full series preview, and then maybe some kind of other episode, maybe getting a Thunder podcast person on here just to talk a little bit about the Thunder or whatever it might be. So looking forward to that and the coverage for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But again, just want to close this episode out by thanking everybody that's been on this journey with me, that has listened to the podcast, interacted with it so far. We've had some really good engagement. Again, you can find us over on YouTube at the Pacers Fever Show, and subscribe, like, comment, helps people find us. What are your predictions for the NBA Finals? What do you think the keys were to beating this Knicks team in 6 games? What do you think about the Pacers window going forward as title contenders and favorites in the East? Again, these teams are going to have to prepare for the Indiana Pacers next year. The Pacers are the top dogs. They're going to be the ones that people are coming after next year. So they're going to try to build their team around beating these Pacers. How do teams do that? I think that'll be an interesting episode that we can do in the offseason once that comes, where we'll talk about just some of the changes that might happen in the NBA. We'll do some speculation kind of stuff where talking about what each team might need to do to take down these Pacers. I think that could be a fun podcast or a series of podcast episodes. So we will do a lot of offseason coverage of this team, but hopefully that offseason is followed up by an NBA championship for this Pacer team. And we'll talk about what the chances are that the Pacers can do that against arguably one of the best teams in history in the NBA. So again, that Thunder episode is coming up. We do not have home court advantage, obviously. They finished with 68 wins. The Pacers weren't close to that. And I think it said that the Thunder had only lost 1 game against the Eastern Conference teams. So that's not good. So it'll be an interesting series. I think there's a lot of things to talk about. It's going to be a very tough series to win. But, I'm feeling pretty confident in this team. Feels like a team of destiny. And we'll talk about what I mean by that. I don't think it's necessarily destiny as much as it is. I just think that the Pacers have the experience to challenge Oklahoma City. And I know a lot of people go, well, what about the Nuggets? They've won an NBA title and they challenged them. And I think that's the best challenge they're going to get because they have the second best player in the world compared to SGA. I think there's some other things we can point to that might be an indicator of maybe this series isn't as lopsided as people think. People think it's in Oklahoma City win in 5. I'm not convinced of that. So we'll talk about that in our next episode, why I think the Pacers actually stand a chance against the Oklahoma City Thunder in that series preview. But thanks for listening. We can be found anywhere you find your audio podcast. And I look forward to covering the NBA Finals. We're on socials at the Pacers Fever Show, where I tweet, and usually it's tweet, Facebook, but also we're very active on YouTube as well, obviously posting videos. And I'm hoping to get some really good content over the coming days just for this Oklahoma City, Indiana Pacers NBA final series. So looking forward to that. I cannot believe that this is real. This does not feel real to me. I just feel like, last night I was watching the guys get their Eastern Conference Finals hats. I was, looking at the celebration and watching Miles Turner lift trophies, Pascal Siakam and Tyrese having the trophies at the desk at the end of the game with Ernie, Shaq, Chuck, and Kenny. It didn't feel real. It felt like I was dreaming, like I was in some kind of weird fever dream. I don't know. I guess I've never really pictured the Pacers, and because I was 7, I don't really remember the last one that this happened. That it was just it's the first time I'd ever seen anything like this, that my NBA team had made it to that point where they were the ones getting showered with confetti and all sorts of fun things. It didn't feel real. It felt like a video game, but it is real. Woke up this morning and there's still stuff that say they want it. So I'm convinced. I've ordered my t-shirts and stuff, and I'm looking forward to watching the Pacers play in an NBA final game. That's just a lot of fun to say. And I keep hearing it. It doesn't sound real, but it is, folks. It is. So thanks again for listening watching along. And I can't wait to talk with you guys further into this season, because we're going to be recapping each of these NBA Finals games, and we're going to be previewing each of these games. So look forward to that. we'll be dropping those episodes here on YouTube and over where you can find your podcast. Thanks again for listening. I hope you guys are enjoying the day as I am, and I won't come down off this high until we can start playing meaningful games again here in like 4 days. So again, that game 1 of the NBA Finals between the Indiana Pacers at the Oklahoma City Thunder is June 5th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Look forward to watching that game and talking with you guys once again on the next episode. But we'll see you guys for the series preview and some other content beforehand. So again, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.